Hey guys, it's Zoe. Today we're going to be talking about how to incorporate humor into your speeches and just like how to write jokes, comedy in general. So let me get to it. Okay, so this is going to be the humor lecture, and in it we're going to be talking about like the rules of comedy, how to use comedy, joke writing, and some more things. So yeah, first, why do we use comedy? We use it for the ethos. It builds like the credibility and trust with the speaker. Using comedy and telling jokes is just inherently very vulnerable. So when you're vulnerable with your audience, it increases the empathy and intimacy with them. And this is especially prevalent in oratory, but it increases your ability to get solvency. If they know that you're vulnerable and the audience trusts you, then they're going to be more engaged in what you're saying and feel more passionately about the problem that you're presenting. Another reason is comedy is universal. Nobody doesn't find one thing funny. And even though the jokes you might be telling aren't going to hit with everyone, comedy in general is just like a shared experience. And it also just creates like within your audience, everyone's listening to the same speech, everyone's hearing the jokes, and it creates like a nice communal experience for everyone. And then the last reason we use it is for memory. Just it's easier to remember jokes and narratives than it is crazy facts and information. So putting that in your speech will help people remember your speech and your topic and solutions in oratory. So yeah, so there's three main types of jokes, the three like S's of comedy, and those are surprise, sincerity, and superiority. Surprise jokes are just out of nowhere, kind of random jokes, and they're like funny because you weren't expecting it. And then sincerity jokes are kind of your more relatable jokes that you like phrase something in a way that's telling that people can be like, oh, that's so true. That's so true. And then superiority jokes are the audience feels superior. And there are kind of there's like two subcategories in this. And it's like feeling superior to the speaker and feeling superior to others. And for the feeling superior to the speaker is like self-deprecating jokes, which can be really funny, but there's also a fine line between having funny self-deprecating jokes and just like dismissing your credibility as a speaker. Criticizing your intelligence or the jokes that you're telling or your physical appearance is bad because, I mean, if you're looking down on yourself, then why are people going to trust what you have to say and in oratory work for your solutions or in info listen to what you're trying to present? And then superiority to the other group jokes are kind of making fun of other people. But there are really some rules in this category, which we'll talk about later how to avoid. But if you're trying to make the audience feel superior to another person, then you can only punch up is kind of what you can call it. For example, you can only make jokes about people who are more privileged than you. You can't make jokes about any person or group that is less privileged than you, because that's just offensive. For example, like I can talk about some rich billionaire and make jokes about like, oh, if only we had as much money as them, because that's making fun of someone who's more privileged than me. But I could never do the same on the opposite end. Just because that's offensive. And then if you are punching up, you need to make the joke about something like tangible and a superiority joke and not about physical appearance. Physical appearance is just something you always want to steer clear of. And I think this is like, Trump is a great example here. You can be like, oh, he has all this money. Like, you can make fun of that, but you can't make fun of like, oh, this is how he looks. Because it's just a fine line there. And then other types of superiority jokes besides feeling superior to like people is word plays and puns. And those are just like only some people, or I mean, you want to make them complicated enough that only some people are understanding them, so they feel superior, they feel special that they're getting a joke that you didn't like expressly try to make funny, and like word plays and puns like I was saying. So yeah, there's like some rules of comedy, and these are the rule of three, which is just, it's just like the funniest number, maximizing comedy. um, so if you're like making lists or something, you should always stick to three and then make the funny one in the end. Um, but if you are going to do, for some reason, more than the number three, um, go to seven or eight, and then it's seven or eight are the other funny ones. Like, so the rule of three, classic, three is the funniest. If for some reason you need to do something with more than three, seven or eight are like the other maximizing comedy numbers. Yeah, always end on the funniest one. And this is like a good example of a surprise joke. It can be a surprise joke where you're using the third as comedy. Like, for example, I'm listing, oh, I went to a picnic and I took apples and blueberries and rabid squirrels or something like that. Like the third one can just be like, whoa, that was out of nowhere. So that's a good surprise joke in the rule of three thing. And then another rule of comedy is specificity. Making a joke super specific, like, creates a feeling of authenticity because it feels like you can't be making up those details. Just adding like really precise details makes it feel real to the audience, even if it's completely fake. And just being like, yes, so I saw a dead squirrel on my wall, or I don't, that was a terrible example, but like, oh, I saw this rabid squirrel and it ate a dog. But being like, I saw its mangled fur, and like adding stuff makes it feel like, oh, you can't be making that up. And then another rule of comedy is the K sound. It's just the funniest sound, hard consonant. K sounds and K names are funnier than most. And this is a real thing. Like, there's been actual research on this, that it's just like objectively the funniest sound. Like Karen and Kevin, those are funny. And like, you know, a lot of marketing uses like Kraft cheese, they just use K. So doing that, using, if you're trying to get a name or a sound, K maximizes comedy. So yeah, a few places that you're going to put comedy in your speeches are, the main places are in your transitions from points and your AGD in your intro. You can think of these as the places where comedy needs to be, or like narratives have to be. And then the rest are just kind of places that will really enhance your speech if you choose to put them there. And those are like in or around complicated rhetoric. Like if you're explaining this really difficult topic that it's just hard to explain, there's a lot, it's very wordy and stuff, you can simplify it into a joke, and that'll help with the memory of the speech. Like I was saying, comedy just helps with memory, and because it's easier to remember, and then it'll link back to whatever you were talking about. Another place to put comedy is in heavy moments, because jokes can release tension. And again, there is a fine line between this. You don't want to be insensitive to whatever you're talking about by lightening up with a joke, and you don't want the audience to feel that you're being insensitive. So there's definitely a fine line. If it's something extremely heavy that's talking about like harm to a person or a group of people or anything like that, definitely don't use comedy to relieve tension. But if it's just kind of overall, like the speech has been going in a dark tone for a while, which is okay, your speech might have that, then you can use some jokes to relieve the tension in the room and make your speech upbeat. But again, that's just kind of case-by-case basis. Another place is in or after sources. This is just kind of if you're needing a joke, here's a good place. For example, you can use the name of the publication as a joke. Like for the Pew Research Center, you could be like, according to the Pew 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 Research Center, and like do handguns or something, I don't know. But, and again, this helps with memory. A a lot of important things come from especially if you're using statistics. That's really important information, and using jokes around it can help your audience remember those. And then how do you write jokes? Use your own rhetoric. So you're going to be pulling from sources and reading the academic rhetoric, and then you want to simplify that into your own words. Of course, you can do some sourcing, but you want to simplify it into your own words, like for the most part. And then you can expand that into jokes. And you want to make sure they're in the context of your topic. You don't want to, sure, there's a bunch of funny jokes, but if they have nothing to do with your topic, they're really just taking away from your speech. So using your own words in the context of your speech is really important. Another thing is use Google. Don't plagiarize jokes. And if you even think that you might be stealing a joke just because you heard it a while ago and it came to you and you thought it was your own, you can always check them to see if they're already real. Don't plagiarize any jokes, but you can always, if you're trying to find, for example, you need like some ideas. I'm trying to think of an example, but say your topic is teeth and you're like, ooh, let me just type in jokes about teeth. You can pull from those to create your own. That's just a good way to start always. And then for joke writing, especially, collaboration is key. You can always text on the GroupMe and just be like, hey, what are some funny ideas surrounding this topic or something like that? And we can all jump on, give some ideas. And then just talking to other people is super important in joke telling, because this is my main problem. I'm very bad at writing jokes. So yeah, getting other people's input is really important. And then now some jokes to avoid. You always want to avoid offensive comedy. Always steer clear of slurs, any other offensive rhetoric. Never use those in your speech. And if you think that it could be perceived as offensive and somebody tells you it's offensive, that is the line. Like, you have to listen to them, because even if you don't feel offended by it, if somebody else is, that's telling you that it's offensive. So you never need to take any offensive risks. You'll be okay, and your speech can still be funny without crossing the line of offensive. And then another topic of jokes you want to avoid is pop culture. Pop culture in general, there's a few exceptions, but in general, it's just an overall gamble to know if your audience is going to understand the joke. A good rule is like the 10-year rule. You don't want to do anything outside of, like, you want to do something within the last 10 years, and nothing too recent, because the judges are more important than students. Like, in the end, the judges are the ones who need to understand your jokes. The students might think it's funny, and like, that's fine and all, but you have to remember the judges are usually not your age, and they're not going to understand the same pop culture references that you do. And if you do use pop culture, make sure that it's pretty obvious that everybody is going to understand it no matter their age. So just make sure to think about your audience. Yeah, so after this speech, I hope you'll brainstorm where to put some jokes and joke topics. Of course, your AGD and transitions, they pretty much those are need sections. And then brainstorm some additional ideas, like maybe you have a funny little section in your topic that like has joke potential or something of the sort. And then another thing is have a comedy writing collaboration session. This can be as simple as texting on the GroupMe, like, hey guys, do you have any ideas about this? And yeah, that's super helpful. So that's all we have for comedy, but very exciting. Comedy's fun. Yeah, bye.